Hello, class. We are Team 13, and our final project is on 3D printing and all the benefits and innovation that goes along with that. What is 3D printing? It's also known as additive manufacturing. It's where a digital file is loaded up onto a 3D printer, and a spool of material or whatever material is available that's going to be made out of, it dispenses it onto a platform or a open place and allows for something to be made in 3 dimensions instead of just being printed on 2 dimensions on a piece of paper. 71.1% of manufacturers have already embraced 3D printing, with 52% believing that the technology will grow substantially over the next decade. So society is already starting to incorporate this into their everyday lives, and companies across the world are already doing it as well, seeing all the benefits of it. There's also, as of 2021, 3D printing comprises of around 0.1% of the global manufacturing market, so it's still relatively small, but it's definitely getting its wings up in the air. In 2019, the global 3D printing market was worth about $10 billion, and the materials within it were valued around $1.5 billion, and 82% of 3D printing is done using plastics as the printing material, but they have other options such as concrete or fiberglass. I mean, they can pretty much 3D print a lot of things nowadays. And vision systems are utilized to help reduce errors by about 60 to 80% to make sure that the part is being produced properly. So let's go kind of into the types of 3D printing that are the major types. The first one is vat photopolymerization, where the building material is a photopolymer resin and a UV light source is used to harden it. That means then that after it's printed, it can be hardened and ready to go as soon as need be. There is no curing time or waiting time for it to harden up. The UV light will just zap it and give it a good. The next one is also called material jetting. As part of this diagram right here, we can see it feeds in from the different spools. You have support materials and build materials that build onto this platform, and to make sure that the part is effectively and efficiently made, and there's no quality issues within it. The leveling blade goes across it to make sure that the quality stays good at every level as it moves up and up in the 3 dimension. And at the end of it, you have a big part that's ready to go. Automotive, any type of industry that you see fit for this 3D printing. The next thing is called binder jetting, where 2 materials are used to form 3D part. So like a powder-based material and a liquid binder. The powder is spread in equal layers, and the binder is injected to hold together the necessary shape to make sure that it's structurally sound. And a final type is material extrusion, and that's where the filament is unwound from the spool and fed into the extrusion nozzle that heats up the material, that then makes it able to make whatever shape that the printer needed to make. So it's kind of like a mini oven in that extrusion nozzle. Moving forward, the innovation behind 3D printing is kind of crazy to think about. So the big thing is the programming. It is impeccable. One simple load up of a CAD or a computer-aided design file, then the printer knows exactly what it needs to do to make the part efficiently. It will display an ETA for when the part should be done, and it will give ETA of when there needs to be a check if needed, or if there needs to be a spinning of the plate or anything like that. It's crazy that you can give it such an optimal and efficient method for it. Next is that the speed of it. When the 3D printing was just coming around, it was very slow, and because the programming and the coding of it needed to take its time to go around and know to make this part. It may be a windshield wiper or even like a lighting housing on a vehicle. But now they're getting faster and faster, and so it's making it more possible for these big companies to hit their massive parts value per week with 3D printing, rather than having to use standard injection molding or stamping, whatever it may be. And the last type of innovation is the multi-jet infusion technology, where there's multiple nozzles dispensing at the same time around it. And so like on this diagram here, this is only 1 nozzle that's dispensing, but there might be 2 that might be spinning around and building this light bulb or building this housing for specific things. It all depends on what is needed for the company, and which then gives a very good flexibility for the company, because this capital investment is very profitable and can be reused easily instead of just sitting on a shelf for 15 years after service when regular production is paused.
Hi everyone, my name is Thalia and I'm going to be talking about our competitive advantages and if the 3D printer is a reasonable investment. So some competitive advantages for the 3D printer is that they are very large, time saving through no shipping or for prototype parts. They have a fraction of the cost compared to the original tool production, and they have minimal manpower when using the 3D printing operation. So basically, for the shipping time, companies will no longer need to worry about transit times or custom controls. So they don't have to worry about paying the extra money to get the part that they need over to them as soon as possible with expedited shipping and stuff like that. Since if they don't get it like that, then it delays production. And then they also don't have to worry about it being stopped in custom controls, or, you know, when things are coming internationally, sometimes it takes a little bit longer because of customs. So the supplier basically just needs to go ahead and send the file to the customer. And then with that file, the customer can go ahead and print out the parts that they need, or make changes to whatever part they need that wasn't working. And maybe that's why they need a new one. So it gives them flexibility and a lot of time saving and cost saving as well. So the 3D printer parts, just require a 3D printer and a software to create a computer aiding design for the part. So that's why it costs a fraction of the cost compared to the original tool production. You don't need a lot. You don't need tool shops. You don't need to submit a 6-month-long process in the creation plan. 3D printers just allow you to ramp up to meet necessary timings as the technology grows, allowing for more flexibility to grow as well. So it's very convenient. And finally, the minimal manpower that is needed for a 3D printer operation. So you cut out all the middlemen at this point. You don't need extra machines or people to take care of those extra machines, or people to supervise the floors like as much, or middlemen in the production. So the company would just hire someone to oversee all the 3D printers operating together and unload the finishing products as they are being completed. So it really does reduce the manpower by a lot. So those are the competitive advantages of 3D printing. So next we have if it is a reasonable investment. So like I said before, this goes along a lot with the competitive advantages. It is a reasonable investment because of the cost saving from transit, scrap and error reduction, and the productivity increase in personnel. So one of the arguably the greatest reasons to utilize a 3D printer for technology is that you no longer will need a prototype or proof of concept productions to be the bottleneck that is logistics. The amounts saved on premium transportation authorities after the parts become delayed would pay for the printer in a few years, no doubt. So basically you are saving a ton just by reducing the transit of whatever part or prototype that you do need. Next, it would be this scrap and error reduction. So you would no longer need to extrude a large tool press or tools between every production session, like I mentioned before. The printer and filament remains in a small, concise production loop, meaning that errors and scraps parts become minimized. So you don't have a lot of logistical errors or production errors with a 3D printer that you might have with other types of machines or bigger machines or more machines in between each process. And then finally, the productivity increase. So hiring a 3D printer technician adds to the productivity overall. You would no longer need employees to be coerced into having to work overtime on original machine scraps out in the middle of production. So the 3D printer technician would monitor and, like I mentioned before, offload all the finished products as they are being complete to ensure that ample time is allotted for production and not wasting everyone's valuable time. So it really does come with a lot of perks. And overall, we do think that it is a reasonable investment. Thank you so much.
Jake Boss. This cost and benefit analysis is for one material jetting 3D printer. At a high level, the upfront cost is large for it, but the benefits in the long run are huge. So the non-recurring costs reflect one-time upfront expenses that are needed to acquire the software and printer itself. Moving down the table, recurring costs are the necessary maintenance, supplies, and labor costs to print the 3D parts over the years. And lastly, the benefits section shows the cost savings or avoidance resulting from the 3D printer investment. There is significant scrap reduction due to not needing to extrude the resin lines between standard injection molding tools. The filament is used precisely with little to no waste when programmed correctly. Also, there is much less transit costs as the company can print their own parts and not rely on other suppliers to ship the parts to them. And the last noticeable benefit is the decreased need for labor, as there would no longer be a need for a shipping or receiving team. As you can see, the first year shows a loss due to the upfront expenses, but over time, this investment shows great benefit and an overall profit to the company, making it a feasible project. Next, the break-even point essentially measures how many years it will take the 3D printer's profit or cost savings to equal or break even with the expenses. As you can see, after 1.949 years, all the cost savings and benefits gained will be pure profit to the bottom line for the company overall.
Hello, everyone. My name is Luisa Maria Escobar. I am going to be talking about the main challenges of 3D printing. There is 3 of them. The first is a general acceptance of this new technology within the workforce, meaning that general acceptance of this new technology within the workforce will be a little bit hard at the beginning because the current workforce will be resistant to this new and familiar technology. We're all uncomfortable at new things. So it is human nature to be resistant to the unknown. In other words, companies need to be ready to inform and help these people through any concerns or issues that they have with the 3D printing process. So baby steps. So little by little, they should get more comfortable at it, and well, they get to know how it works. Number 2, upfront equipment costs. The printers and design software are pretty expensive throughout that first year, but after the benefits are prorated over the duration of the decade that they are working, this challenge becomes a smaller hurdle to jump. So it will be harder at the beginning, like more expensive at the beginning, in other words. And number 3 is training costs for employees. Trainings overall, like in general, they're expensive, but in this case, for example, employees need to be trained properly because this is something new for them. Will be something new for them, so they need to be trained properly on how to successfully use those new printers for their advantage. 3D printing experts tend to book up weeks in advance, so they need to work in advance, but prepare this in advance, because as I was saying, experts tend to book up weeks in advance, so aligning a trainer to come in and assist with the process is vital. So managers, companies need to be very organized when doing this and do it in advance, not last minute. And then if they're going to implement this 3D printing, they know it's going to take a while and it's going to take time, money. They have to be patient. There are going to be pros and cons, but at the end, it will get better. They'll see the benefits towards the end, like in a couple of years or so. And that's it. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Rafael Santana, and I'm going to be talking to you guys today about the adoption and implementation concerns when it comes to 3D printing. Basically, there are several factors that cause difficulty in the implementation of 3D printing. While it does save a lot of labor costs for a company, it increases the cost of the equipment and overall products that they're using in production. A lot of manufacturers have difficulty with consistency of their products, the quality, strength, and the reliability can sometimes not be exactly the same due to the 3D printing. And sometimes the product are turning out in different strengths of quality or weight. The products also have to go through a production approval process, which is basically the design of the parts or the specs meeting the requirements that are being set by the industry. And then also another issue with implementing 3D printing in the majority of the companies that exist is that there's been studies done by several universities. For example, Loughborough found that 3D printing consumes 50 to 100 times more energy than injecting, molding an item. MIT also found that laser direct depositions use hundreds of times more electricity than traditional machines would. So this is obviously an environmental issue. It's a cost issue, and just overall, it needs to be improved before 3D printing can become a more useful technology, I would say. Also, 3D printers need to be well ventilated in order to prevent the spread of nanoparticles that are released by the 3D printers to avoid people getting sick or their internal organs being damaged by these particles. Another issue that arises from 3D printing is that there is a knowledge gap between the employees that currently work in a lot of these factories or companies that are trying to implement them, and they don't understand how to run the machines. The equipment costs and product costs are very high overall. And just in general, it's kind of difficult to adapt or implement these 3D printers right now. I think that in the future, if they are worked on and improved, the technology improves, so use less energy and to be a little bit more reliable to compete with the actual traditional machines that exist, then I think that yes, 3D printing will one day for sure take over the market, because it just saves a lot of labor for companies. And if the speed at which the production takes for the product to happen increases, then there's a win-win for companies. There's no loss on that side. So I think definitely it's a good idea, and one day I think it will take over.
This is Kyle Logan again, and moving forward now, some current issues that are solved with 3D printing. There's a good couple of them that are major to companies. The first one is that logistical lead times and costs diminish greatly. No longer would companies need to worry about sourcing engineering concepts overseas and then having to wait for weeks, maybe months on end, as we've seen with the disruption that COVID has caused with different shipping methods. Instead, the engineering concept can be just sent over via email, whatever it needs to be. The customer can then load it up into their 3D printer and just go along their way, and they let their parts print out. The proof of concept is made. They can do their tests, they can do quality tests, anything that they need to with this 3D printed part, and can move forward with their innovation in their own technologies and products with this as a helping, as a stepping stone, as you call it. And as you can see, the proof of concept wouldn't need to be involved with a bunch of injection molded tools or stamping tools, typically. I mean, I work within the automotive industry, and within Ford, they have a lot of call it inefficient methods to have proof of concept proved. Instead of just making a 3D printed design of it, they'll make a whole full tool, and if the tool makes a bad part, then that cost is just lost, and that's kind of mind-boggling. So 3D printing helps figure that out and makes the trials and proof of concepts less expensive. And also, scrap and wasted resin and injection tools are reduced. The 3D printer knows what it needs to print and how much to print of it and when to print it, instead of having a big injection molded tool where resin is fed in through it, and then you need to extrude it all out and blow out the lines after you run as many parts as you need for production. The 3D printer then can just say, hey, I am done making this part. Let's move forward and we'll save this material for the next one, and can go like that. So instead of having that inventory loss, then you can just move along with it. So in conclusion, there's different types of 3D printing. There's many of them, and I only touched on those 4. But moving forward, it could be 3D printing a lot of things. I mean, I'm seeing, and we even saw houses being 3D printed in 24 hours in Haiti after a bad earthquake or bad hurricanes. Maybe just one building or one small room, circular room, but still that could help thousands and millions of people actually that see natural disaster if they just have housing made up for them like that after such a bad things happen to them, natural disaster. The break-even point for one of the material jetting printers around 2 years, and that's an approximation. There's no full math behind it or full calculations with it. There's just estimates found online, but yes, it's a high upfront cost, but the flexibility and maneuverability that it can provide is major to companies. And nearly 3 out of 4 companies are already accepting this technology in some capacity. Yeah, they may not be using it to the full potential as it could be. They're still using it, and it's pretty crazy to think of all these companies that what it can do as soon as they figure out and optimize their processes with it. And yeah, this is just another stepping stone that companies can use to better their business and better their products for consumers like us. And I know I'm for one and excited about it. And I hope more companies will start to utilize this and better themselves with it. So thank you.